the theme of every year usually comes from the UN, and you know the UN as well sets the Sustainable Development Goals. So Kenya being a member country in the UN, the country had to celebrate and mark the day.
Okay.
And so as we mark the day under the theme volunteering for future inclusivity, we are using, or we are saying volunteering, or we are trying to prove to the country and the global arena that volunteering can be used as a bridge to bring those who are left behind, especially the communities or the groups that we call marginalized. So volunteering is an easy way of bringing them on board so that we go into a future which is all inclusive. Because development will not be achieved when part of the society remains behind.
And how would you say Kenya and the East African region is tracking in terms of an all-inclusive society, both socially and economically? And even politically, if you may.
Yes, even politically. Actually, politically is even much better. I would say Kenya has done much better than the rest of the countries. This has been proven because the VIO Society has been part of the global working group on volunteering standards, global standards. A few months, not months, actually, a month or so, we were in Kigali in October. As the VIO Society and the team from Kenya were being part of the global team working on the international standards. And from that, we could actually talk to our colleagues from other countries and realize that Kenya is actually far ahead. Other than that, today we were having 15 volunteers which were engaged in the process of selection as volunteer champions who are being awarded from 15 countries. And we realized some of them tells that in their countries, volunteering has not even been recognized by their government. So it tells that Kenya is clearly ahead, and we can say we have done so well in terms of the policy because we brought the entire society and the other sectors on board. We are even working with a few corporates to develop all this. So clearly I can say Kenya has done well. Economically, we conducted a survey together with the Ministry of Labor because in Kenya volunteering is domiciled under the social department. That is a department under the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. And the research said this was just to look at the economic contribution of the volunteer sector to the GDP.
And how did that look like?
The research puts it at 3.66% of the GDP, and that is huge. So we can say again, in Kenya, volunteering, through evidence, volunteering has really improved our economy or the GDP. I mean, politically, I think there is just no data that has been put down, but we can always speculate and see that most of the things that have happened to this country on political grounds, largely, much of them has been out of voluntary services. The ones that have been done for gains, even the country has not gained out of them from independence.
What are some of the proposals that you would put forth? Because you're in this space, you've been on the ground, you know what is really needed. What would you propose to governments, for example, the Kenyan government and even the East African community, to do in order to improve inclusivity by partnering with you guys?
Our government has worked well with us, but the proposals are still coming more. For example, yesterday the VIO Society, in the witness of government through the ministry, including the PS, Nelson Marwa was around, and the UN, we inaugurated Professor Kivuta Kibwana as our goodwill ambassador for volunteerism. This means we have a plan going forward, a suggestion that part of them is in the policy and part of them are not in the policy. But now we are saying we want to work under the umbrella of Prof as our goodwill ambassador to further the discussion. Part of the proposals are how to integrate volunteerism in the county integrated development plans. That means we need a discussion with the county governments, and that means the national government already has it in the policy. So the county governments still don't have it. And the reason why we are choosing Professor Kivuta is because Makueni has gone ahead as the only county which has done the policy, work on their policy. Meaning they have looked at the national policy and cascaded it or customized to their county. So we want other counties to learn from Makueni. That's why Professor Kivutha becomes our goodwill ambassador, to discuss this at the level of the Council of Governors, and we integrate volunteerism, or we say mainstream volunteerism in the county integrated development plans.
Interesting. Now, when we talk about the UN and volunteering, you earlier mentioned that we are geared towards helping the continent and even the world achieve Vision 2030, which are some of the sustainable development goals. But if you look at the country and even the region, some of the core fundamental goals have not yet been achieved. Health, food, clean water, sanitation, and even clean energy. So how can you, in partnership with governments, like you said, county and national, work towards ensuring that this is the route we take?
Perhaps it has not been achieved because we have not used the full potential of volunteerism. The research in 2017 spoke about between 12 to 13 million volunteering. But you know that was only able to capture what we call formal volunteering. These are people who are volunteering under structures, under institutions or organizations. But there is informal, on the other hand, which is huge, bigger, and even better. We have not been able to capture that and use the full potential of that other end. So perhaps when we are able to coordinate and sustain the sector at the central point, we are able to achieve all that.
Now, I want you to help me place a finger on some of the things that you're doing in the country and even in the region. We know that we are having issues right now, particularly adverse climate change effects. We're seeing flooding, mudslides in the northern region just recently. We also know there's cross-border conflict and refugee overflow in the country. So as a volunteer society in the country, what are some of the projects that you're involved in?
You will, if you look at the, refugee camps right now, you are likely to get 10% employees and 90% volunteers. Both, some from World Vision, others from UNHCR, and many other international organizations that are working on human rights and all that. Coming into the country in other sectors, you will realize, for example, one of our member organizations like Kenya Red Cross is right now busy trying to support communities, and they are not just working on disaster response, they are also working on early warning and sustainable development in the community. Last year we worked under one theme called volunteering for resilient communities. These are more long-term, but just let me say, if we look at Kenya Red Cross having 160,000 volunteers across the country, and what they do, if we were to bring it to man-hour, you have millions of hours, but that is just one. So if every organization counts to what they're doing. And then we have VSO working on livelihood program, poverty reduction, and all the rest. We have so many programs. So the network as the umbrella body does not run programs, but the organizations run a lot of programs.
Now, with the surge of the Kenyan population, it's constantly increasing, and a majority are the youth. And going through the UN Volunteers website, it says that being a volunteer improves your employability chances. Talk to us about that.
That is very, very true, because being a volunteer at the very beginning perfect your leadership skills, and every other employer out there, other than just what we graduate with from school, they're also looking at things like interpersonal skills and leadership skills that you may be having. You might be one of the people we would call IT guru or guru on the other side, but without interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and such like that, you will find very little or few organizations believing in you and wanting to engage you going forward. But being a volunteer, you are out there serving community. You develop your interpersonal skills and even leadership skills in your own space, at your own pace. So by the time you move that and put it together with what your career is from school, you are really a wholesome person. So it really improves your employability skills.
As we almost come to a close, I am interested to know, moving forward after the celebration of the day today and hoping for a more inclusive future, what are you hoping for in terms of just ensuring that probably as we head on to the next year, before we celebrate the next Sustainable Development Goals, what are some of the milestones that the Kenyan government and even the East African community should have achieved in terms of inclusivity?
Number one, my biggest hope as the chairperson of this whole network is to see the first quarter of the year the National Volunteerism Bill passed in Parliament.
Number two.
It is important for us because it unties some of the achievements that we could get as a country through the ministry, because you know the government don't put money in policy making, they put money in policy implementation. So the bill will actually give them opportunity to do that. Number two, we are looking forward to a society or a country where better part of the society, 90% of the population, understand what volunteerism is. Because without understanding exactly what it is, it cannot help us much. And this, I mean, right now it is simplified as work without pay, but we want people to understand it's a social behavior. Something you do even when you're well employed and well earning, you still want to do as a social behavior.
Thank you so much for making time, Mr. Odede, and we hope that towards the end of next year you can come back and you can tell us how far you, the country and even the organization is tracking in terms of just ensuring an inclusive country and an inclusive future for this generation. Thank you for making time.
Probably not just at the end, even in the middle when the bill is passed, we really need to tell the society what the bill is all about.